Imagine living in an ancient society where your life could be controlled not just by laws, but by the physical destruction of your body. In ancient times, castration was used for many purposes: punishment, religious devotion, medical treatment, and even political control. Today, we're diving into 5 of the most shocking castration methods used in ancient times. These methods were often brutal, shocking, and left permanent marks on both the victims and the cultures that employed them. 1. Surgical castration. The first method is perhaps the most well-known and direct: surgical castration. This method involved the complete removal of the testicles through a cutting procedure. Surgical castration dates back to ancient civilizations such as Rome, Greece, and Persia. In Rome, for example, castration was often used for creating eunuchs, men who had been castrated and often served in high roles in royal courts, religious services, or as guardians for the emperor's harem. The procedure was done in a very painful manner, often without anesthesia. The victim's scrotum was opened, and the testicles were either cut off or torn out. In ancient times, a failure to properly care for the wound could result in infection, sepsis, or even death. This method could be performed as punishment, particularly for men who had committed serious crimes, or it could be for those chosen to serve the royal family or religious leaders. Eunuchs were often seen as trustworthy and loyal, as they were believed to be free of sexual distractions. But the brutal reality of surgical castration left these men permanently sterile and psychologically scarred. 2. The second method is crushing or squeezing, which was more painful and often performed without any instruments. This method was common in India and China and was used both for punishment and as a way to control certain individuals. Rather than surgically removing the testicles, this method involved applying extreme pressure to the testicles using hands or tools. In some cases, force was applied with such intensity that the testicles would be crushed or rendered non-functional. The intent was to cause severe injury, making it difficult or impossible for the victim to reproduce, leaving them permanently infertile. This form of castration was particularly humiliating and agonizing. It was often performed in public to ensure that the punishment was seen and acted as a warning to others. Sometimes this method was used on men who were seen as rebels or traitors, particularly in societies where having children was a symbol of one's masculinity and power. The key takeaway here is that crushing or squeezing was not about immediate death. It was about debilitating the person for life, ensuring that they could never have children, and sending a powerful message to anyone who might defy the ruling powers. Chemical castration. Moving on, we have chemical castration, a less physically invasive but still extremely painful form of castration. Ancient Greeks and Romans used herbal remedies and chemical compounds to either suppress sexual desire or directly impact male fertility. One example of this is silphium, an herb used by the ancient Greeks. Silphium was so highly prized that it became an economic commodity in the ancient world. It was used as both a contraceptive and an agent to render men sterile. The herb was consumed or applied, and over time, it had the effect of decreasing testosterone levels, ultimately making men infertile. In some cases, chemical castration was used in combination with physical punishment, or sometimes just as a preventative measure. While this method didn't involve the painful physical removal of the testicles, it still had permanent effects, leaving men unable to reproduce and permanently altering their hormonal balance. Though chemical castration wasn't as immediately deadly as other methods, it was a slow, quiet form of domination. In certain societies, it was used as a form of control for people who couldn't be physically subdued but were seen as too dangerous to leave unchecked. 4. The next method we're exploring is ligature castration, also known as banding. This method was less invasive than surgical removal, but still incredibly painful and humiliating. The procedure involved placing a tight band or ligature around the base of the testicles, restricting blood flow to the area. Over time, the testicles would shrink and eventually fall off due to lack of blood supply. This technique was used in ancient China, India, and some parts of the Roman Empire. It was painful, but not as immediately lethal as the more invasive methods. However, it still had devastating effects on the individual, rendering them infertile and often leaving them with severe scarring. Unlike other methods, ligature castration was less risky in terms of infection and death because there was no immediate exposure to raw wounds. However, it was still a long process. The victim would suffer for days or even weeks before the testicles shrunk or fell off completely. This method was often used on slaves, criminals, or those in royal courts where the fear of rebellion was high. It was a way to ensure obedience without causing the immediate loss of life. It served as both a punishment and a form of control over fertility. 5. Burning or chemical scarring. The final method of castration we'll explore is burning or chemical scarring. This method was especially painful and involved applying heat or caustic chemicals to the testicles. Ancient Egyptians, Indians, and Chinese used heated tools or burning substances to destroy the testicles. In some cases, hot irons or boiling liquids would be applied to the genital area, causing extreme pain and severe burns. In other instances, caustic chemicals, such as strong acids or alkalines, would be used to chemically burn the testicles, rendering them useless for reproduction. This method was used in cases where a fast and highly visible punishment was needed. While burning might not have removed the testicles entirely, it certainly disabled the victim and left them permanently scarred. The mental and physical toll was devastating, as victims would often suffer from infection, disfigurement, and psychological trauma. Though it might seem medieval by today's standards, burning was also a symbolic act meant to show that the person's masculinity had been completely destroyed. These 5 ancient castration methods show just how far societies were willing to go to maintain control over their people. Whether it was through surgical removal, crushing, chemical suppression, or burning, castration was a powerful tool for both punishment and control. What do you think about these ancient practices? Which method shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this video shocking and educational, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more deep dives into history's darkest secrets. Thanks for watching.